Hello, welcome to True Hoop with me, Jarod, Hector, and Coach David Thorpe. How are you, sir?
Bored, not much going on. Just another Monday. No big deal. Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here except the NBA season tips off tomorrow. We have two games to tip off the season. Knicks Celtics will be the early game, and the West Coast game will be Lakers and the Minnesota Timberwolves. So exciting times. We love the NBA. Obviously, it's all we do a podcast. David's got clients that he's working with, so it's just exciting.
I have if you saw my desk right now, I've got like a little Japanese notebook that I like my daily thing that I've got to remember to do, like check in with FEMA to see how much, because I can maybe get some money back for having to stay in a hotel for 40, whatever.
Right.
So it's just my little to-do list, whatever. Then I have all my notes from phone calls, whatever. It's a separate thing. And then I've really struggled to come up with like a calendar to keep track of what I have to keep track of for the season. So I kind of came up with a plan. I'm very clueless with computers. I have no skills. So I literally hunt and peck when I write too. So I got a list of like the teams I have to follow in college, also in the NBA.
Right.
And then the calendar for the week, Sunday through Saturday. And Chrissy created this beautiful worksheet. And so early this week, it started my week starts on Sunday. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it's got almost nothing on. I'm looking at it right now. Then the hurricane hits. And it doesn't stop until we go to London for my birthday in mid-February for the All-Star break. Luckily, college is not going. Neither is the G League.
Yes, correct.
So it's just the NBA, which is a lovely couple weeks where we got to watch the best players in the world when they're healthy, give or take a few, sadly, already hurt. And I fucking love it. Yeah, it's a great time of year.
I mean,
weather's turning better. It's all nice.
Because you, as you just pointed out, now through probably like Thanksgiving, this is where they're running the fastest, jumping the highest, right? Yep. Everything's great. By the time we get through December, Christmas, we're already starting to see, okay, we're downshifting a bit. And dear God, when January hits, these guys are like, please get us to the All-Star break. We need a little vacation from basketball. We'll talk about the season and some injuries and some different stuff a little bit later. But we wanted to tip off the show talking about the defending champion Boston Celtics. As you guys know, we have these content calls as a group here at True Hoop with Henry and our editor Travis every week in the mornings on Mondays. And David will often come in with stories and ideas, and he'll share them on the podcast too, right? Well, he'll analogize things to movies and music or whatever. And we were talking about the Celtics and what he likes so much about them. Of course, he likes Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and all that. Anybody with any half decent knowledge of basketball, even poor knowledge of basketball, will be like, yeah, I get it. They're good. But there are players in particular who you like about this team. Yes, what they do on the floor, but off the floor and sort of the other things that are harder to measure why they are so important to the Celtics. And they are Jrue Holiday, Al Horford, and Derrick White. And Henry, who's also great at analogizing, he says, these guys are not like Jim Morrison, famed Doors lead singer, right? Someone who's like the creative genius, like, yeah, let's do the thing. These guys are the more like, hey, what time are we getting to the studio to make sure we lay down these tracks? What's our, how are we getting from point A to point B? The sort of conductors that got to keep everything moving down the track. And you love these three men, particularly for the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, initially on the call, I talked about all of them could one day be president, although I don't think Horford was born in America.
No, I think he's Dominican Republic, I think, yeah.
And I'd be very happy. We'd have a much better country. Although I very much like the Democratic candidate right now. I think she's incredible, but that's a whole separate thing. But in this conversation we're having today, I relayed the story of how a lot of agents I talk to, they like when they recruit a player who's a little bit just different. There's no other way to put it, because it's not any one thing that makes them different. But they think that's the stuff of where the superstars come from. And college coaches, I spoke to two last week, one on the phone, the other in person. But the one on the phone, who's a young but very talented head coach, he talked about that too. Like, I kind of like these guys. They're just a little bit different. They tend to be the superstars. And so I thought about that. And I watched something recently, and I also thought about those three Celtics guys. I relayed to you guys that story of the lead singer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers were going through a tough time. They were not famous yet. They were famous in a tiny little niche.
Right.
He brought in his friend Rick Rubin, a very, very fabulous and super famous.
World-renowned music producer.
Yeah, I don't know what his net worth is, but it ain't nothing.
Oh, Rick Rubin's probably a billionaire.
Close to it. Right. Because he's produced so many great hits forever. Yep. And if you don't know what a producer is, that's a whole separate discussion. But basically, they just have to create something, and they're not the creative talent, but they're the behind the scenes, whatever. So he was walking around Anthony, what's his last name?
Anthony Kiedis.
Kiedis' house, just looking for inspiration because Anthony had nothing. And he had battled a heroin addiction. I think that caused some problems, whatever. So he, this is a famous story. He found a poem called Under the Bridge. And he said, "What's this?" And he's like, "Oh, it's nothing." No, what is this? And he said, "A poem I wrote, but it's not the kind of thing the Peppers do. We're like a funk soul band or whatever."
Right.
And he's like, "I don't know. I think it's pretty amazing." They got with one of their other, I think, bass player. He put some guitar riffs to it. They brought it to Flea and their guitar player, and they added some more to it, and they all really liked it. Of course, Under the Bridge is maybe their best hit of all time. Certainly an all-time classic.
Yep.
And it completely changed the way the Peppers are seen globally forevermore.
Yep.
That's the producer's job. So then you mentioned Jim Morrison. We talked about how Ray Manzarek was the keyboardist for the Doors. I remembered now. He was like the quarterback behind the scenes, the stable influence to Jim Morrison's wild weirdness, whatever. And the Doors don't make it very far without some stability. Well, I don't think Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are Jim Morrison.
Correct.
To be clear. Or Anthony either. In fact, I'm a huge fan. And I think they are adults.
Right.
But they're not the presidents. They are the superstars. And I think the presence of the other three helped them even more. Superstars don't have problems, Jarod, succeeding.
Right.
And in some cases, not all, they don't have problems dealing with success. They expect it. They're driven. They have problems very often with failure. And so I give the three presidents a lot of credit for helping both Tatum and Brown in rougher moments the last few years shine brightly when they needed them. And I also credit Jason Tatum's wife and his child and the three presidents for how Tatum handled a relatively before the Olympics, average postseason.
Yes, yeah.
For him. And as we've talked about on the show a few times, I saw no one happier than Jason Tatum when Jaylen Brown got the MVP. Now, he could be faking it, but he's not a professional actor.
Right.
Professional basketball player. They tend not to be good at poker faces. Right. And I thought he just seemed so fucking thrilled for his guy. Tatum has enough credit and money but that just because he has it doesn't mean he'd be willing to play second fiddle in a sense. I think the three presidents have a lot to do with that, as does Brad Stevens. And Joe Mazzulla's got a little mad scientist going on.
Sure
he ain't
does.
your typical coach, okay? I love that combination. And so what we were talking about was the league is full of parity. Boston ran away with it last year. 14 games above second place in the East.
Yep.
The Pacers gave them a hell of a series. It was a 4-game sweep.
Correct.
The Mavericks were pretty competitive. It was a 5-game gentleman's sweep,
Correct.
as they call it. This might be the first year where I kind of feel like one team over the field. It's the first year in a long time that I just don't know if anyone else has what it takes, given those three presidents.
Yeah.
And the fact that Brown seems angry at the world all the time. I love it. Tatum has a little bit of a vengeance last year's playoffs, the Olympics too. I feel like we talk about human nature and dealing with success and how hard it is. Complacency kind of takes root. I feel like Boston's in really good hands.
Yeah, no, I mean, those three, we have lauded them for as long as we've done this podcast.
Yep.
Last year in particular, these guys are estimated plus minus monsters. Derrick White just, I think, re-signed a deal, and everybody's like, how much money? I'm like, no, it's all well worth it and more, right? Like, such a vital cog in them winning. And again, as David often points out, and, what's so important that I keep stressing to anybody I have conversation with who hears what we do and what I do, guys, it's about winning possessions.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about fucking step back, whatever. Like, yes, you can win a possession doing that. Factual statement. But there are a bunch of other ways to do it. And those two three really good at helping you win possessions. And they were, of course, critical in Boston winning the championship. Look, I think the biggest thing, of course, as with anybody, is health, right? If 1, 2, or 3 of those guys are down for extended period, obviously that's going to change the course, right? We can't predict that. Who knows? But I'm with you, David. When you reminded me when you were on the call this morning, 14 games ahead of the Knicks who were second place last year. I mean, they coasted. And this year, I think you were right. Shit on our call. Who cares if they win 60 or 55 games? I don't think they care either.
That's the point.
Yes.
That's the point. It won't affect them.
Right.
They get it. It's the marathon.
Right. Correct. We are just trying to get ourselves to April, and we are conditioned the best possible because we believe in the alchemy and construction of who we are based on what we've done in the past, not just winning last year, but all the lumps I've talked about them going through in the years prior, right? Losing to Golden State in the finals, getting all those conference finals ahead and losing to LeBron. They feel they have we know what to do and what is expected of us to win 4 out of 7 games in 4 series to win a championship. And I'm with you. I think sky's the limit, and their guys are still young. Horford's of that crew, the only old guy.
He is old,
right? But everybody else, prime.
And I mentioned Mazzulla as a mad scientist. Here's what I mean by that. I'm no expert on this because I don't follow the Celtics that closely. Where I watch Mazzulla every night, but I caught him on an interview recently, and after a preseason game, maybe before a preseason game. I think it was after, and I don't remember exactly anymore what it was, Jarod. It was before the hurricane. So everything before the hurricane is really kind of a blur right now. But he was asked a pretty innocuous question about whatever, and he turned it into a chance to throw rocks at the press. And you know very well that we learned from Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame speech that he created these Visigoths in the world out to get him all the time. All these monsters out to get him. Like, you making shit up, bro.
Right.
Like,
but
the whole
whatever
world
works for you.
You have a commercial saying, be like Mike to a lovely jingle. Like, what are you talking about? But that's what Joe is doing. And I think it's likely that this is by design.
Yeah.
That I think that he is creating Visigoths that are at the door. And guys, it's just us against the world. And as a way to galvanize and to motivate and to inspire.
Yeah.
And good for him.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yep.
Yeah. It's harmless. He's not. Celtic Nation isn't going to be throwing rocks at the local beat writer the way in the world. Right. How some people in politics is making it seem like the press are the terrible people when they're really just trying to tell us the truth, or at least in some cases anyway. I think it works.
Yeah.
And so I like all the different vibes I'm getting from Boston. And also, I don't know that there's anyone else close. It'd be different if this was like when the Warriors were rolling. I want to say I was ESPN for most of that. I thought that the Rockets were the one team that could beat them. Maybe I was at
they almost did and probably should have.
Correct. So that was the year I did pick Houston to win. I was wrong. They didn't. But I picked them to win. Or maybe I said if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Houston this year. I don't see a team like that.
Yeah.
Because the one team that I think is built for talent-wise is too young in OKC.
Yeah.
They're super talented, but super young. And they added some core role players, but you're still depending on Chet and Jalen and maybe Cason Wallace hugely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just think Boston has a decided edge.
They do.
In that scenario, minus injuries, which of course is always a change of consequences situation.
And the history of the league has shown us, David, right, that when a team depends on young players like that in such a dramatic role, you tend to not win championships, right? That's not usually how it works.
Yeah. The last one I mentioned was Toronto in 19. Siakam was in year 3, was their second best player probably. OG was a rookie, but far down the list of best players. But Kyle Lowry was huge. Marcus Gasol was huge, and they were in their mid-30s.
Right.
Yeah, or close to mid-30s. So,
and Kawhi had already won a championship. So,
and was the best player in the world probably when he's healthy. So, I Shea could be that. Shea could be the best player this year. He absolutely could.
Sure can. Yep.
And then if J-Dub takes a big step and Chet takes a big step and doesn't overstep, which is an important thing, then I get it. But I still think Boston has got a decided advantage.
I'm with you. And, you mentioned Mazzulla, and one of the things that reminded me of was last year. You know how players, David, often when there's a dead ball timeout or whatever, and they're going to commercial TV timeout, and the opposing player has the ball and they're going to shoot the basket, shoot it. a player will play defense or block the rim to not let them get the shot, the ball go in the hoop, right?
Yeah.
That whole psychological thing. Mazzulla was also part of that last year. He would timeouts, everybody's going to the bench, whatever. If a player was close to him and an opponent, he would go and run to like put his hand up and like block them from shooting, like in that mad scientist kind of way. And I think, to your point, coaches have themes and ideas every year, right? It's like, okay, we start building is what I'm thinking about in the off season. What's our thing going to be this year, right? And I think, yeah, to your point, it's like every coach uses us against them, right? That's just a common thing. But all right, who's our target? Who's the them this year? Media, great. This is what we're focused on. And I think it's important for this team, and I think it's gonna galvanize them for sure. I like where they're headed. And like we said, the only thing that can stop them really is injury and things of that nature. We were talking, or you so aptly pointed out last year or 2 years ago. Last year, I think you said trade Giannis, right? Was that last year or 2 years ago?
Last year. Yeah.
And
before they traded for Dame.
Correct. Yes, well before they traded for Dame. And surprise, surprise, David Thorpe looks like a genius as usual. Because in my opinion, and I think in yours as well, the Bucks are just going to be a very old, expensive, non-contending team. First of all, we just got news that Chris Middleton will miss the start of the season because he's still recovering from those ankle surgeries off season.
I did not get that news.
And we said that in order for them to be at the best version of themselves, he has to be right. And we're already starting the season behind the 8 ball, right? Dame's a year older. Giannis is a year older. We don't see it. So it made me think about, all right, what other teams in this league, David, are on the verge of basically becoming the Bucks, which is old, expensive, and a non-contender because they didn't move on from a superstar when they should have. And look, I was talking about this with someone last week, David. I get it.
We all get it.
It's no team's ever going to do it because you will lose the press conference in your local town and nationally. You're going to get crushed.
Right. They're not going to do it until the player's in his last year or demands a trade.
Correct.
And if he's in the last year and has demanded a trade.
Correct.
Like Carmelo in Denver.
Correct. I mean, think about it, right? After the Warriors won 3 years ago, that was probably the time to trade Stephen Curry, right? In your estimation. They would never, right? Because for all the obvious reasons. But what ultimately ends up happening is, okay, we keep the band together. We keep our old superstars together. As the NBA works, the older you are, that's when you get paid the most. When you're probably not as good as you were, you're not as good as you were 5-6 years ago. It makes it harder for you to contend because now you have no assets, no younger players to get better. Like, it's just a variety of different reasons. So I said, who's on that path with Milwaukee to be just old and expensive and headed towards disaster? And David wrote some teams in there. Yeah, the Suns, number 1 on that list.
Number 1 because of salary.
Correct.
Those are salaries in parentheses, yeah.
Yep.
So they have the most expensive payroll according to whatever website I was on.
Yep.
And I mean, let's have that debate right now. Are they contenders in your mind?
Again, I had this conversation with someone last week. If Bradley Beal plays more than 30 games, they are.
Right. I don't think it's 0. I agree with you.
Right.
I don't think there's a 0% chance they can win it all.
Right.
I think the Pistons have a 0% chance.
Well, yes.
Right. Correct. So my point is, not every team has a 0%. They are one of those teams that have a non-zero chance. They could do it.
Yes.
What the odds are not great.
Not likely.
And they're real expensive.
Very expensive. And with Bradley's got the no trade as part of his, their only saving grace, David, is that their third star, he's not third, but like the others of their 3 superstars is under 30 in Devin Booker. That is their only saving grace, which means that's the guy they should probably trade, right, David? If they want to rebuild and be better 3 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you took away fans,
yes,
and emotion,
and
just
which is impossible.
Heart, yeah, if you could, I think some guys have done it better than others. You see what you can get for any of them. You try to get your bank account back in balance with a decent future, and you don't worry about your product today. You try to load up on young guys that maybe have a lot to prove and or don't have to pay them a lot of money, and you build out. And who knows if Kevin Durant come January versus guys, it's like, come on, we're one game below 500. Let's do something. And you've done it before. Yeah. So that's definitely a team where, boy, it'd be amazing to see a couple teams go after one of their guys.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, look,
Booker and Durant anyway.
it should be he's classic new owner, right? You come in, I'm gonna spend lots of money. He's gonna get tired of that shit real quick. Like, consider you're paying high luxury tax and the team is only going to the first round or second round of the playoffs. Like that's not what you pay all that money. The number one payroll in the league is not for first round of the playoffs. That's not what you do that for. So we'll see how long he's willing to do that. Right. We mentioned the Bucks already. The Lakers obviously are another team, right? LeBron and AD. I don't know what else you do there. AD, of course, that's the one, right? That if you could move him, you do. But I doubt that happens either.
Yeah, I do too. They and listen, they're same as Phoenix. There's a chance.
Mm-hmm.
I can make an argument for them to win the West in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. JJ's got to prove to be a really good coach.
Yep,
they're running some good stuff. Dalton Connect. I didn't put him on my list for potential rookie of the year. I don't know that he'll play enough, but he had a great end of preseason. Scored a ton of points in a row in the fourth quarter for a win. He's an SEC player of the year. That's not nothing.
No.
If he ends up doing fine, D'Angelo plays better offensively. Rui does some things. They defend collectively. LeBron and AD turn into better leaders they've been in the past. Maybe JJ inspires them to do that. But still, it's a very, very steep payroll for low chances.
What do you think? And I know he hasn't done anything yet. And I kind of, we talked about it, no sort of background to prepare him for it. But if you had to guesstimate how you think the JJ Redick experience is going to go year one, what do you think?
I think he's up against something he's not comfortable with and never faced with before. You're dealing with an agency that runs a team, basically. And so he may be close with them, but they're in charge. So I don't think he's going to succeed in getting the buy-in he needs from LeBron and AD. I think he's maybe better than Darvin, but I don't know. I liked Darvin a lot when he got there. I just thought it was a mistake to hire a guy who's never coached before, and then they did it again. I'm not sure that there's anything intelligent about that. I think it's going to be mostly a mixed bag.
Yeah.
And but he's making a ton of money, so I understand why JD did it.
Yeah.
He never has to worry about anything else. He made good money as a player too. So, but still, there's never enough.
No.
It's going to be average at best, probably.
Laker fans, let's hope you can repeat as NBA Cup champions, because we ain't thinking you're winning the NBA championship.
Probably not. Again, I think they can be really good. I'm high on all the talent, but the odds aren't great that the culture is going to enough to feed the beast.
A team that you like because of what you think Spo's going to do with them offensively this year is Miami. I think the area where you're concerned is Jimmy, right? And had they held on to Jimmy too long, should they have already moved on from him? Because Bam is what, 27, 6'7", somewhere in that range.
27, yeah. I think they're a little less talented than some contenders, but better coached. I like what they're doing offensively. More threes from the 5 spot, playing faster. Seems like they've got Hero he's saying publicly the right things about playing the role he should play. Less on the ball, more scoring off the ball. That's good. We'll see how Rozier does as the quarterback. I think they got some depth and a great coach, but it's a very high payroll for a team unlikely to win 50 games. Possible, but it's unlikely. I think they'll come out better than they have before. At least they'll want to. I don't think it's been as much a focus as it is now.
Yeah.
Like they can't start off on this side.
Oh, no, definitely not. And a team that you and I are both very concerned about this year, the Denver Nuggets. And that's a team that, again, Kroenkes would never do it because Jokic is a generational player, literally once in a generation type of player. But we have serious concerns about who is Jokic playing with. Like who was the second best player on that team? I know based on salary, it's Jamal Murray, right? That's what, but based on play, that's not what we're seeing. He was not great last year in the postseason.
He was terrible.
Correct. David's always much more direct about that. He was terrible in the postseason last year. Terrible in the Olympics. Did not look great in the postseason. Had a decent shooting game in the last one, but as David said, it's preseason.
In the preseason,
whatever. Look, he has had numerous lower extremity injuries in his career. He's a small guy. I know he's listed at 6'4". He don't look 6'4" to me. He's a small guy, and if his ability to sort of create separation with a step back or whatever is not there because of injuries, making a 100% diet of tough shots is not a way for success in this league. And that's what I'm worried about with the Denver Nuggets team. Y'all know I love Michael Porter Jr., but as David so elegantly pointed out on our call this morning, we know what we're getting there. That ain't getting much better than what it is. So I don't know.
I did say that. Yeah, Jamal Murray. I'm writing about him this week, today and tomorrow. I watched him on tape today. I looked at his stats. He really had a good season last year.
Yeah,
just abominable playoffs. Really bad. Over 6 threes a game. Made less than 2. Seems like he's lost some pop. And I watched him on tape. He had a very good last preseason. He made some tough shots. He made some open ones too. Terrible before that, like alarmingly bad. But it's preseason. Maybe he was resting after the Olympics. Not that he did that much in the Olympics. He was really bad there too. And I heard he was bad in June, training for the Olympics, that he was really getting scorched in practice from people there that told me that. And he doesn't have pop in the preseason. Some of his layups, he looked like he jumped to kind of hang and score, and he couldn't really hang. Who knows why? But it's a concern. It's something to watch because I don't know what they do. I mean, they are handcuffed if he ends up being just average. He can't be below average.
No.
He can't be average.
Yeah.
And they're screwed if he's average. They just don't have a lot. And they're depending on young guys that may not be able to do it. But either way, you got to have Jamal do more. And so then the key is, does Jokic say it's okay?
Yeah.
Does he just say not care? I love Denver.
Right.
I'm happy to stay in Denver. I don't know where he could go where he could have horses. Well, Denver has plenty of land outside the city. I know because we're looking at homes there.
I don't know that he has horses in Denver, though. I don't think he has them there. Oh, yeah.
Do horses, is it too cold? No, Serbia is cold.
No.
Fine there.
I just don't know that he does his racing there during the season. I think that's all off-season stuff.
He doesn't, but listen, if they only win like half their games, he's going to be time to do some more stuff. He'd be kind of burned out. So, but if he says to them, "Hey, Cronkies, like I've given you a championship,
right?"
And I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah,
it's hard to say no. We're not trading you. This is
right.
Players have that kind of leverage. It's not easy to find places for him.
No,
as I'll write about a little bit, the teams that are most in position to help, they're in the best positions to help Denver make a deal happen are in the Northwest.
Right. They ain't trading him there.
Yeah. No, they're not Portland and Utah and OKC. They're not moving him to those rivals.
Right.
But they all could do deals for him. So, I'll be writing about it. It's going to be a really interesting watch on how Jamal does.
Yeah. The Warriors, I mentioned sort of to start this off, right? To kick off. It's Steph and Draymond, really, right? Are the two expensive players on their roster? Wiggins
about to be Kuminga.
Forgot it.
If they extend him, which they may not.
They just gave Moody 3 years, 46 or something. Oh, 45. Okay, yeah, not a ton.
I could be wrong. I thought it was 15 a year, but maybe
not a
I'm
ton.
Wrong.
But that's not crippling them. You like them in the preseason? They're 6-0 or 5-0, whatever they were. I still think they have ultimate problems, which is okay. Besides Steph, who else is your other shot creator? And if Wiggins gets back to where he was when they won the championship 3 years ago, okay. But
I worry less about shot creation because the Cuisinart helps with that. I think they've answered some size positions with Jackson Davis and Looney at the 5. It's a very, very good duo there. Jackson Davis is young, but I think he's talented. Draymond is a big question mark, Jarod. He was a bad preseason player, but he was good last year.
Yeah.
So let's just hope he'll turn it around.
Right.
That might be the one team I'm a little lower on than I probably should have been a month ago. And so when you have teams like the Clippers and a few of these other teams that are missing guys to start the year, maybe Golden State's one of those teams that can kind of generate a little more buzz.
Yeah.
But they look good. They're very expensive. Very expensive.
Yeah, they are.
And Steph's got his deal. I don't think they'll move him.
No.
They're going to have to. I mean, someone like Kuminga, as much as they hate to move him, if he's not ready to help you win, he's just young, you may have to trade him for a more veteran player.
Yeah.
And hope that guy can pair with Steph. But I do think they can be a plus team this year. You have a 48 to 52 wins possibly.
Okay. And then the Clippers, we just mentioned, we know that Kawhi will miss start of the season. Look, I think we've said this literally from day one. Guys, this is not – Kawhi has a chronic injury. This is a permanent thing. And as I've said a million times, playing NBA basketball isn't going to make this injury better. He'll be fine when he stops playing basketball, whenever that is. It's up to him to decide when he no longer wants to play NBA basketball. I don't know when that's going to be. So until he does that, this is what it's going to be like.
That 3 he took that went around the rim, I think someone counted 17 times. If it doesn't go in and they lose, it was a tie game and they lose in overtime. You're talking about one of the more disappointing careers ever, considering where he had reached.
Right.
Yeah, I don't blame him. He's injured, but that 1 year saved everything. And it's been not so good since.
He's won 3 NBA titles, 2 with San Antonio, and obviously the one with Toronto. Kawhi is an interesting player because people are always like, "Oh, what's the deal?" Blah blah blah. His sort of what he's accomplished, David, quite remarkable considering his limited availability, right? And I think I did the calculation somewhere. God, he's had like, I want to say at least 2 titles, 5 All-Stars, 5 All-NBAs, 5 All-Defense. It's like, right, at least five of those things, and at least 2 championships. Like 11 guys in the history of the NBA has done that. Those are all first ballot Hall of Famers.
If you're asking me, is he going to be a Hall of Famer? My answer is yes.
Yeah,
I have one hard and fast rule about Hall of Fame. It's not a subject that terribly interests me, but I'll say this: when you, even for a month, can claim you're the best player in the world, you're in the Hall of Fame. I don't care and so he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, easy.
Because he was the best player in the world for a bit of time, I thought.
Sure was. Yeah. Sure was. Yeah. And the accolades are already there. Like I said, only 11 guys have done have accomplished those things. At least 5 All-Stars, 5 All-NBA, 5 All-Defense, 2 titles.
But how long is he out? No one knows, but he's not back this week.
Oh, he is 100% not playing this week. That's not happening.
It's the James Harden show for a while now. Yep. Hopefully James will do great, but that's a big miss.
Yeah. I mean, look, the Clippers are going to be bad. We know this. Oh, and by the way, who has their future draft picks, I think, for the next Oklahoma City, right? I think has some of those picks from the Paul George trade. And it looks like this might be this could very well end up being a lottery year for the Clippers. It's very possible. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
I had him at 46 wins with Kawhi. I haven't changed the schedule, the calendar up, but my predictions, but I would have less than 40, 41 maybe now. Yeah.
So it's interesting, man, to see what happens there. All right, folks, we'll be back after a brief commercial break. All right, David, some rule changes in the NBA. We talked about that a little bit in the summer, and we talked about the allowing more sort of fouls off the ball, more physical play, I should say, off the ball is likely this year. So that's going to impact certain teams. The teams that come to mind for me right away are teams that tend to do a lot of off-ball movement, right? The Cuisinart, the Warriors, the Pacers, blur ball, right? Teams that do a lot of stuff, a lot of stacking actions. Like if you're allowed to grab and hold, that half a second or a second is not going to fuck up your timing. Now instead of at 14 seconds, we're at 13. So when you think about allowing more physical play off the ball, what are the teams that you're thinking about adjusting to this?
Yeah, well, so first of all, what you're describing is, if you're a football fan, it's like bump and run defense, where you're jamming receivers at the line of scrimmage. There's risk to that in football, because if you get beat on it, you're in trouble behind you. But you're trying to throw off the timing, which is what these teams will do. And I think there'll be more holding also. So I put it on the list. There's 2 ways to look at this. There's the teams that rely on getting fouled to be part of a big part of their offense. Orlando was 22nd in offense, and number 1, I think, in most free throws attempted per game.
Oh,
that's a concern. They're a team that relies on getting fouled, not what you're describing. That's the thing I'm going to get into in a second. But they rely on getting fouled. The Lakers were 15th in offense and were 2nd in free throw attempts per game. The Bucks were 6th in offense, were 3rd in free throws attempts per game. Thank you, Giannis.
Yeah.
The Sixers, 14th in offense, 4th in free throws attempts per game, of course. And then Houston, 5th in free throw attempts per game, 20th in offense. So all of those numbers potentially could go down because there's less likelihood that they'll be taking as many free throws per game. That doesn't mean they'll be ranked differently in terms of free throws per game. It's just those numbers will be lower. And so teams that are less reliant on going to the free throw line a lot, I shouldn't see as much of a reduction in their offensive efficiency. So that's a concern. System-wise, It's the shooters that are off ball in terms of movement shooters, like Steph. Tyrese has been a movement shooter. Buddy Hield's a movement shooter in Golden State now. Those teams, Tyler Hero might be a movement shooter this year. Duncan Robinson, a movement shooter. If you can hold guys more, you can stick to them better, chase them around screens, go under them better. And so, yeah, that's going to have an impact. But there's a converse to all of this, which is the teams that fouled the most last year. So, for example, the Pacers fouled more than anybody, were 24th in defense efficiency. There's an argument, Jarod, that they'll be going up in efficiency because they're just not going to have as many fouls called against them. And that's a typical killer. The Rockets were 10th in defense efficiency, but second in fouls per game. Sixers 11th in defense, third in fouls per game. That's the Nick Nurse specialty, foul everyone they can't call it all. Pistons were 25th in defense and fourth in fouls per game. So all those teams, we could see a growth in their overall defense efficiency because they can get away with more in theory than they could last year.
Yeah. Look, these things kind of happen. They're cyclical, right? And it's going to take players a little while just to get adjusted to how it's being officiated. Once they do, they'll be fine, right?
And referees too.
Yep, and the referees.
Yeah, I didn't see any consistency in the preseason. They still sometimes called some really crazy fouls. Apparently not as crazy as the end of the WNBA game last night. I didn't see it. I just saw that video. That is if you've seen it, that's the most commonly blown call. Is the good defense forces a out of rhythm shot, and it looks like it's a disrupted shot that was caused by a foul.
Correct.
When in reality, it really wasn't.
Yeah.
But in the NBA, I think that they're going to be fighting themselves a little bit. The referees are to get a real handle on a consistent call of foul versus non-foul off the ball. But I guess they'll adjust to it eventually as the referees get more consistency. The players can adjust to what they can get away with, what they can't.
Well, you mentioned Nurse, right? The idea of fouling because they can't call everything. Well, it's like the NFL, right? There's holding every single time in the NFL. But if they called it, the games would last 17 hours and it would never end because it'd be penalty. So you're going to have players who are like, no, we're going to keep doing what we do because you will not call it every single time because they just can't. All right, we gotta keep this product moving. So that'll be interesting to figure out who figures out when and what they're going to do. All right, David, injuries and. It's kind of sad that we're already talking about that because the season hasn't even officially started yet. It starts tomorrow and we're already talking about this. And, Knicks fans, sorry, we often kill your head coach, Tom Thibodeau, for his lack of, shall we say, embracing of modern science and just understanding it. So we're not going to get on him today. Instead, we're going to talk about Michael Malone from Denver because there's some interesting comments he had, David, earlier a couple weeks ago. After a preseason game where the Nuggets lost to the Suns in a game where the Suns rested all their big stars. And, the article in Denver Post is talking about how do the Nuggets sort of get their players conditioned and get the rhythm themselves ready for the postseason. And Malone was asked, do you continue to push your starters deeper in the second half of the preseason? Or do you run more at practice? How are you going to get the conditioning up? Because Malone was concerned about the conditioning. And he said, we probably have to do both. I think some of you can do during games. You play a little later, like you did in that game. Like tonight, I ran those guys whole the third quarter. And obviously Jamal didn't play in the second half, but I played that starting unit the whole third quarter and tried to push their envelope a little bit. And that was probably a little bit hard on some of those guys. Then in practice, I think we can get up and down more. I think so often as coaches in modern day NBA, the league's gotten so soft that everybody's afraid to condition and run. We have to. And David, anytime coaches start using phrases like soft and those things always set off alarm bells in my head. Mainly because once coaches start talking like that in press conferences and in those settings, it then gives a license for fans to be like, see, we told you. These guys just don't work hard enough. They're not conditioned. They just got to do more running in practice and whatever. And as someone who works with NBA players all the time, I would venture to guess 100% of the players that you know and work with, none of them come to training camp fat and out of shape, having done nothing all summer. Like, that's not what they do. Like, they're professional athletes. They trade on their body. They come to training camp ready to roll. But this is an 82-game season. and if you're lucky, more than that in the playoffs, plus over 100 games. You cannot go balls to the wall in August and expect to be anything near competent in April. And I feel like coaches like Malone, when they start throwing stuff out like that, they just do everything a disservice. And he had another quote later, which I'll share with you, but just sort of your initial thoughts on NBA players and how they take care of their bodies in the offseason.
Well, I won't bury the lead. If when you talk about your players being soft, after a lot of these guys won a championship with you, I think you're asking to get fired. Like, what the fuck are you doing, man? It's offensive. It's just offensive. I didn't like it when my high school coach would say that to anyone. To say it to a grown man when he won a championship with these guys, like, come on, man. You got to be better than that. I'm really disappointed in that. It's a word I never think about with these guys. Soft is not something I think about. I do think sometimes they can have anxiety issues of their own creation because of the culture of checking social media too much. I told you guys this morning, I was talking to a player recently, and he admitted he had no idea that this was going around on social media. He's like, Coach, you told me not to pay attention to social media. I'm like, oh, okay, you were listening. Good for you. It's not a good place for young people. I'm deeply proud that my own children are almost never on it. And when they are, it's them posting someone else's story that's celebrating a teammate. I love that. They need to get off it. And but soft, like the amount of movement these guys do, the rehab is tough. Running hills, the amount of, well, here's a better way to put it. I think NBA players, by and large, can be good at anything that requires long-term focus that the average person just can't do. The average person can't spend hours shooting. You may think that they can because it's fun. Not when you're trying to make every shot, it's not fun. Because now you have to process the missing. It's hard to do it day after day after day after day after day. It's boring, but not to them. It's a boring thing, but not to them. This is their business. And that requires a toughness to do that. Lifting weights. I listened to Kevon Looney talk in a press conference the other day. He lost like 25 pounds. He said, they asked him, the Warriors press asked him, how'd you do it? He said, well, among other things, I fasted till about 4 o'clock every day. We worked out in the morning. I would not eat. I would just drink water, whatever. Do a workout, wait even longer, have my first meal late in the afternoon. Not easy to do that when you're a professional athlete working on your game every day. I know people that have fasted. I've tried the fasting thing till about 1 o'clock or so. I didn't really enjoy it.
Not great.
but I wasn't playing basketball. I was walking 3 miles. That's it. So the lifting weights is hard. Rehab is hard. Practice and running around is hard. The idea that they're soft is the opposite of anything I could ever imagine. They might just be sick of you, Mike. Yeah, and you're going to have to be held accountable to this. If you rally them up and you guys play great, then we're going to say, okay, you did a great job. If they don't, I think you'll be coaching somewhere else. I'm sure someone will hire him. But I don't like the soft thing. I can't believe the players appreciate being called soft either.
Definitely not. If you guys remember, the Denver Nuggets started the preseason before everybody else. They were over in Abu Dhabi playing a few games. And so this was Al asked of Malone later in the week after that loss against the Phoenix Suns in preseason. And he was asked about the tired legs and is it maybe a little bit difficult because their preseason is a little bit unusual having to go to Abu Dhabi. So this is Mike Malone. One of our coaches told me that this morning. I don't know if it's true. Maybe it's an old wives' tale, but it takes a day for each hour when you come back from a long trip like that. So 10-hour time change, and we're not even back to that yet. I think it's only been a week since we've been home. So I'm sure there's some carryover from that. But my retort, because I'm not one to give excuses, is I look at the Boston-Toronto score at halftime last night, and I say, well, it's not affecting Boston. They had 69 points at halftime, and Toronto had 37. So it affects everybody differently, but I'm sure there's some hangover from that trip. And again, David, like, I'm not asking Mike Malone to be a sports scientist or be at the cutting edge of, like, that's not what I'm asking him to be. But my guy, like, you can't say shit like that. Like, again, it's, first of all, it's uneducated, right? Like, to even put something out there. I don't know if it's an old wives' tale, because you start using language like that, again, it triggers in everybody else. It's all bullshit. These guys don't need rest. This is nonsense. They're just babies. Look how much money they make. No excuses. Like all of that, like macho culture that is really a huge problem with sport. And I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be a level of that. Of course there does. Obviously, you're playing fucking professional sports. These guys all know that. You think they're idiots? They know what they're doing. But this kind of shit to me, like it, as you mentioned, it's offensive and it just bothers me. It's really annoying because it's like, bro, you can be smart about the science and also your players can be tough and hard at the same time. Like both things can be true. But when you start talking these dichotomies, it makes it seem like that's not possible.
Well, it's I don't like the culture we have where coaches can call players soft, but players can't speak about coaches in a negative way at the pro level. These are grown men and multimillionaires, and they run and operate large foundations and have families sometimes. Like to criticize them that way really is offensive to me, and to more importantly to the players. So let's just see how it goes, because I got some real concerns about Denver, and those comments didn't make me feel like, okay, they'll figure it out. I don't know. I don't like their chances.
No, neither do I. And there are real concerns, right, David? We mentioned Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Joel Embiid also did not. Well, Joel didn't play most of the preseason. Paul George got hurt, I think, 2 preseason games ago. Luka suffered some injuries. We know KP Porzingis is out. Mitchell Robinson's out. Chris Middleton, I just mentioned him at the top of the show. Jaren Jackson Jr. got a hamstring strain like the first day of training camp. So he was, I mean, these are, and Henry asked a great question in our chat this morning. He was like, so is Mike saying that these players should have gone harder at the most easy, like what is he saying about this idea of being soft, right? Like this is the easiest part of the schedule and we've already got these problems, right? So should they have gone harder? Like what's the reason? And again, it's understanding, and again, I'm not asking Mike to be this way, but to your point, you don't need to say these things publicly. Understand the science, understand how much rest and recovery is necessary and all the different things players need to be prepared so that they can do this 82 game gauntlet of a season. And if they're a good team, make the playoffs and be good come the postseason, right? Like it takes a lot of work, which they all do by and large, but it's not easy.
No, and I don't know what Denver's role in a lot of this is. I know I'm very proud to say I have a lot of NBA players, over a dozen. And none of them had an injury in preseason. And I don't think it was an accident. Bad luck happens to anybody. Sure. But you can also create some luck. And so my job in the offseason is to build out their offseason plans. That includes everything. And when it comes to how much time they're spending in the gym, what are they working on each week? They give me their trap. They give me, okay, I've got to be in Europe on this week, and I'm going to see my family in Georgia this week. And so once I get all that, I build up their calendar, talk to their own personal coaches, whether with the team or their own private coaches. And we work. But it's all, I mean, I consult with scientists about it and have for many years now, many years, as to when to take it up a notch, when to take it down, when to cool it down a notch. The design is to deliver them to preseason in good shape, let them tweak things up a little bit more those last couple weeks before camp starts, then in camp, get through the preseason, upgrade a little bit more between the last game of the preseason and the regular season, and here we go. Well, not everyone has someone like me. That's what the teams are supposed to be doing, which is why I do it, because a lot of these teams don't. It's as simple as that. And they're like, hey, we'll see you back in September kind of thing. Not always, but sometimes, more than a few times. And so my question is if they weren't doing that, did you injure them with your training camp? That'd be bad. Yeah. I know of at least 2 coaches, one who I think is very good, the other I think sucks. But both of them, after 2 days of training camp, they gave them the next day totally off. That's smart. The teams that did it both think they can make it to the finals. So that's smart. They're thinking this is mid-October, right? And we're open to play in June. Yep. And so let's take a day off in mid-October. It's not a big deal. And so when I listen to Looney talk, the Warriors are really hard. Maybe Friday or Saturday. I don't remember when I listened to it. A lot of 5-on-5. I thought that was good. You're ramping up for the season. Yep. So I don't think these teams are great at stuff like this. No. But the bottom line is to blame the players and their mentality or their willingness to push themselves. I just don't think that's a smart place to be when you're a head coach.
I agree. And again,
I'd like for some of these guys that demand a trade and say, I just want to go play for a team that values soft guys.
And again, the overall point about modern day NBA being stuff again, because this is all coded language by Malone, right? Because it pushes the onus somewhere else, right, onto the players and not onto himself and the organization, as if it is again because David, fans are busy, right? And the reason why I'm talking about fans is because the conversation, whether it be online or whatever, it generates there. Then it leads all the talking head shows, right? Fans aren't thinking about when they go to their normal work day to day what a player's doing all day. All they know is, oh, Tuesday night I'm going to turn the game on. Oh shit, this guy's already hurt. Blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, I heard Mike Malone say guys are soft. Right? It's that simple because they're not thinking about.
That's right.
And why is this person injured? Oh, it's not as easy as back in my day we did 3-a-day practices, and it's like that's not what it's about. It isn't. It has nothing to do with those things, right? It's much more complicated and much more nuanced and detailed than that. And again, for Malone to just throw out words casually like, modern day NBA and soft and all this sort of thing, it's not a good look. And like you said, for a team that won a championship, like not great. We're already concerned about this team as is. You were concerned about them when they won the championship about Malone then. Of course, they got Nikola Jokic, who can erase a lot of mistakes because he's fucking brilliant. Well, we'll see how all that works out with Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., everybody else this year. We'll see how it all plays out. All right, folks. League starts tomorrow. Get excited. By the time we're back on Thursday, we'll have games and stuff to report on. And
lots of them.
Hopefully nothing bad will have happened by the time we're back on Thursday. But shit, it's the NBA. Anything's possible. All right, guys. Take care.